Good evening. It is March the 27th, 2023. This is budget session number 12. Only one more to go. And
So far.
so to kick off our meeting, I will ask Ms. Hastings if she would call the attendance.
I will. Mr. Richards.
Here.
Ms. Walsh.
Here.
Ms. Higgins. Here. Mr. Weinberg.
Here.
Mr. Cotton.
Here.
Ms. Robinson.
Here.
Ms. Meeker.
Here.
Mr. Croto.
Here.
And I am here, so we are all here.
And we have a full board and obviously a quorum. And tonight we are going to cover any final items or last questions that we have before we get into hopefully approving the budget on Wednesday evening. With that, Superintendent, do you have anything?
I don't. I think we were hoping that we would have a discussion with you, and Jack has a presentation that he did just to kind of give us an overview, and we'll go from there.
All right,
Okay.
then in
Yep.
that case,
Yep.
Mr. Dunn?
I was just going to recap where you are, just in case people have only turned in to the end, kind of like I did for Division 2. Just the budget goals for this budget, the current status of FY24, and then we'll go into a board discussion, and then the important dates, the work sessions you've done, and the public information. So quickly, these were the goals. Priority 1 of equity and diversity, 2 curriculum and instruction assessment, 3 social emotional learning, 4 communication, 5 facilities, and 6 safety. So the original budget we brought to you was a general fund budget of $100,966,034, or 2.44% increase, with a revenue of 2.39% increase. That budget includes these adjustments, 2 pages. That also included a contracted service for a Runlet resource officer. That has already been removed. So that led to this budget of $100,870,000, or a 2.35% increase, or revenue of 2.29. And if you deliberated after a couple work sessions, you got to ask us to put together a list of reductions of $2.15 million to create a local rate of 35-cent increase, or 2.61, and a combined rate of 3.96. So in order to do that, we refinanced some tech loans that is a loan from your facilities trust fund. We are not going to do a transfer into the technology fund, and we're going to withdraw some money for technology to fund the projects for this coming year. The math coaches would move to, there would be 3 of them, and they would move to Title II as a 1-year only. These positions would come to an end in June of 24. The PIO would be split between the general fund and Perkins. We would take the money you put away for the extraordinary needs grant that you received in October from the state and fund the district OT, the Abbott Downing preschool teacher, and the DEIJ for a year. We would reduce a position at the high school in return for the assistant principal, and the curriculum coordinator position would be eliminated. And then we would bring in additional revenue from the health risk reserve of $691,000. That's how we got to the $2.15 million. So that brings a budget of $99,932,445 if we're rounding, or 1.39%, and revenue of 1.32% increase. Here is the history of the tax increases by the 4 different taxing entities back to year 2000. So this budget that is posted right now would result of an estimate based on a $300,000 home of a $105 increase on the local. For the state portion would be $69 for a total of $174 when you combine the education taxes. And as a reminder, the state, you have no control over that. Again, the school nutrition budget of 2.3 million. And estimated federal grants, which we level fund, of 3.7 million. These do not include any competitive grants that we receive or that we're going for right now. These are just the entitlements. And that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn. So, we had the opportunity to hear from the public in our hearings last week. Does anybody have any questions or discussion? And at this point, we're at a board discussion. Go ahead.
I just have a clarification. When you were going through some of the different cuts, you said a teaching position was cut to make way for an assistant principal position?
It's in a special ed.
Oh,
Kathleen can speak more to it
okay.
if she wants to.
I just don't, I don't recall.
Was it a teaching position that was cut, or?
Yeah, if I could, I would
Yeah.
rather discuss it in non-public.
Okay, we can go into non-public.
All right.
I just need a motion.
I just don't like cutting teaching positions for administrative positions.
So,
Thank you.
uh,
So I would move that,
I don't know what number, but okay, go ahead.
91
See?
It's right up there
A.
behind you.
okay.
Jen.
I
Well,
move that we
see.
go into non-public sessions, following 91A:3. Matters which if discussed in public would likely affect adversely the reputation of any person other than a member of the public body itself. Unless such persons request an open meeting, this exemption shall extend to any application for assistance or tax abatement or waiver of a fee, fine, or other levy if based on inability to pay or poverty of the applicant.
Is there a second? Second by Mr. Weinberg. Were you able to get that?
Yep.
Say things, and then this will be a roll call vote, so whenever you're ready.
Mr. Richards?
Yes.
Ms. Walsh?
Yes.
Ms. Higgins?
Yep.
Mr. Weinberg?
Yep.
Mr. Cotton?
Yes.
Ms. Robinson?
Yes.
Ms. Meeker?
Yes.
Mr. Croto?
Yes.
I vote yes.
So we will go into non-public session. I anticipate this will be approximately 10 minutes. Superintendent, will that be enough for you?
Yeah, that's fine.
All right, so I anticipate this will be about 10 minutes, at which time we will come back to a public session and continue our discussion. So we are in non-public. back in the room. Do I have a motion to come out of non-public session? Moved by Mr. Weinberg.
Seconded.
Seconded by Ms. Robinson. Will you call a roll for us?
Yes.
Ms. Hastings?
That was Sarah, right?
Yes.
Yes, it was.
Mr. Richards?
Aye.
Ms. Walsh?
Aye.
Ms. Higgins?
Aye.
Mr. Weinberg?
Aye.
Mr. Cotton?
Aye.
Ms. Robinson?
Yes.
Ms. Meeker?
Yes.
Mr. Croto?
Yes.
And I will. We're back.
Motion to seal the minutes.
Motion to seal the minutes made by Ms. Walsh. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Cotton. Sorry, I missed that. Thank you very much. And let's make this a roll call as well, just for,
Okay. Mr. Richards?
yes.
Ms. Walsh?
Yes.
Ms. Higgins?
Yes.
Mr. Weinberg?
Yes.
Mr. Cotton?
Yes.
Ms. Robinson?
Yes.
Ms. Meeker?
Yes.
Mr. Croto?
Yes.
And I am yes.
Okay. Very good. So we are back. Any other questions or discussion for Mr. Dunn? Ms. Higgins, there's your question. Are you good?
I'm good, thank you,
All right.
I appreciate
Very
it.
good. Ms. Meeker?
Thank you very much. I just wanted to bring us back for a few minutes to the math coach positions, because, you know, we haven't talked about that enough. And I make that joke because I feel like we've all been thinking about it and we've all been chatting about it, but I feel like worth having sort of a summary discussion here in session. I had talked to Jack last week with my questions about the fact that we're bringing 3 positions back. And I had some interesting conversations with teachers in the district, and one said something that I thought was really interesting, which is that if they're not going to get the same person back, that it only means that the teachers have to say goodbye twice. That we have perhaps teachers returning to their positions as teachers this year, which means we would bring in a new math coach, and they would really only have that 1 year to ramp up, execute that math program in an untested way, because they're going to be sharing that position among schools, and then they'll be done at the end of the year. So I started to worry that even though on paper it seems like a great compromise to bring 3 positions back for this next year, that it might end up being ineffective, that our return on investment might actually be lower than we anticipate, that they might not be able to be as successful as they have been. So right now we have 6 positions because we have 1 coach at the middle school. We're bringing back 3 to share. So I asked Jack if he would be willing to chat with us about what it would look like to have 5, to have 1 for each elementary school, removing the Runlet School coach, but what impact that might have on the budget to bring them back, and how that would impact the tax rate at the end. Jack, do you have comment on that?
So if the same people were to come back and do it, the salary for those individuals, I took the 3, what you have budgeted in there are the 3 most expensive right now, because they would assume that they're staying in their same place. So if you took 2 more, just the salaries alone are 52 and 54,000, so that's 106. And we add all the benefits, and then you're probably going to be looking at closer to 170, 180 for everything to add 2
For
back
both
in.
positions?
Yeah.
Kara, question. Would we be thinking these positions would be 1 year only, or are you thinking longer? Because I know you noted that it might be ineffective for only 1 year. So what were you?
From my perspective, in my head, it's still temporary. I just feel that I'm working through this idea that only bringing back 3 doesn't get us where we need to go. That if we are going to really give this 1 more year, 1 more shot, because we have established the need, we want continuity of service, that having each of the positions for each of the elementary schools increases the likelihood that the current teachers that are serving as math coaches will return as math coaches next year. I think it's less desirable to give them, to say, we're going to reduce the positions and you're going to have to split your time between schools. I think there might actually be an issue with one of the current teachers who has been named several times, might not be certified to work at more than 1 school. So because of teacher certifications. So I was just starting that conversation because, yeah, exactly. So, there's just, it creates some hurdles for bringing back the current math coaches. So I just started thinking about that concern of mine, which is that if we're looking for continuity of care, if we're really trying to give this one more year, one more go, that how much of an impact financially would it be for us to just have that discussion around 5 instead of 3? So I just wanted to bring it up.
And along with that, the discussion should be had to have 0 instead
Correct.
of 3.
Yes, that was
Because if
actually,
they're going
yes.
to be ineffective, if they're not effective and it's only dependent on the person that's in it now coming back, that is a real precarious position to be in. And so for completeness, we should consider that as well.
Absolutely. One of the teachers I talked to said, might as well rip the Band-Aid off now if you're not going to give us the full. So it is both sides of that discussion.
I saw Pam's hand first. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I think it's more than, if it's not the same person, I do think it's restructuring the entire program is partly their point. There are a lot of good things in there, but there are things that I would choose the math coaches before other things in the budget. I think living with an elementary school student, I can see daily, we're not caught up yet. We may never be caught up, but the superintendent just mentioned that we only have 40 students in the middle school taking algebra. And if we want to increase those numbers, we need to be focusing on the kids that are in elementary school right now. I had some proposed cuts to help us get towards there.
Well, the math coaches have been the most vocal. But that doesn't mean that the Project C coordinators aren't, or reducing class sizes. We could jack this budget all the way up with all very, very good things. And that's what I'm going to bring us back to, is the hard decisions. So I'm anxious to hear Ms. Walsh's proposal. But, this is why you say no to grant money, because you have to have the strength to say it's gone, and now we have to go back to where we were. But I'm anxious to see what
if
your
we're talking
proposals are.
about the grant money, one thing we could do is take some of the money out of that we're putting towards the HVAC system and put it there. This money was meant for helping kids recover, to expect kids to recover from being out of school for a year and a half in elementary school in less than 2 years is probably unrealistic. Part of my proposal, I think, is Mr. Reardon said that they only need half an art teacher as opposed to the full-time art teacher they requested at the high school. And I would delay on the new assistant principal at the high school as too, and that would probably get us there. But there might be other options.
Go ahead.
I know that there's, we've all had these tertiary conversations about, well, if we add, 5 for an additional year, then there will be continued lobbying to keep this position, because clearly folks feel it's effective. I would be interested in, if we do approve 5 for one more year, what is the plan on the ground to utilize those services with the anticipation that they end after this year? So can we see something written out by, and forgive me, it's Chantal, who is our math specialist for the district, math coordinator for the district. How does she anticipate utilizing 5 folks to get our teachers to the place where they feel comfortable? What does that look like on paper, so that everybody sees that there's a finality in this too? Because there are things in that budget that we are putting into grant funding that we may not be able to put into grant funding that next year, that some of those are hills I'm willing to die on. So if we make this accommodation, I'd like to see some compromise, and we brought back the number you wanted, we brought back the folks you wanted, but we've got one last year. What does that look like for everyone? And I saw Ms. Hastings had something to say too.
Yeah, I too had some conversations with teachers, and there was great concern about there only being 3 positions. For a lot of different reasons, learning new students. If you're the math coach that's now going to another school and you've got all those students to work with and you don't really know them yet, that's going to take some time. And that they would really like to see this. And I can honestly say, I didn't come to a lot of board meetings as a teacher, but they're the group that came here and were vocal and passionate about saying this has been beneficial. We had asked to see the data, and we're told we'd see the data by March to show that there was an actual improvement from the math coach positions, and we didn't see it. That's a little frustrating. So, when we're trying to make this decision, it would have been helpful to have that information.
Is that something we have?
No, well,
Well, we just finished today, we finished the last data meeting
Okay.
of all of the 7 schools, so they're compiling all of that data.
Okay.
I can tell you that the elementary schools, this is very general now, this is a big picture, but I would say that the elementary schools are closing the gap. I would say that we're probably about 6 months behind. So if you're at the end of 3rd grade, getting ready for fourth grade, you're probably more like a middle of the year 3rd grader. So we see the gap close to about 6 months, which has shown us progress. There's no question about it in the elementary school.
Can I follow up on that? Do you think 1 year closes that 6-month gap? Is it because that's really where the question is. If we think that keeping this resource
I
is
want
going to
to
help us,
remind you, it's about coaching and it's not about interventionists.
Right.
I know I heard you say meeting with kids and going into buildings with new kids. This is coaching teachers. Now, there is some intervention going on, I know that, but the intent of this grant and the intent of those positions was to coach teachers around mathematics. And if you heard Chantel, that's what she'll tell you. But we also know that some of the math people were used, some of the math coaches were used for interventions along with their math tutor. Remember, there's a math tutor in the building too that was used. So, but it did vary a little bit from school to school.
So I will say that, I am, I'm usually the guy who says I don't want to spend the money and stuff. But I have great concern over our math program. And I think that elementary school is where we need to see improvement. I very much second Ms. Robinson's point is I'd love to see that plan of development of the teachers who can then take it on themselves and pass that on to newer teachers coming in as well, right? Because we're training a trainer here. So, but the one thing I will say is that, there is one elementary school that doesn't have the HVAC system, and that's the Beaver Meadow School, and it's in a it's a challenging area, equity-wise and socio-economically. And I don't like to just say, well, we're good with all of our new schools and everything now, and that school doesn't
I
go
would
in.
say replace
So
that with
I-
general funds or
I
more
would,
debt
okay,
service.
I just don't want to,
Yeah, no, I
I
wanna
don't
go
want to
with
lose
that.
sight. I do like using one-time money for one-time projects, though, and so how we work this out is another thing. But I do support improving our math program. I'm a little less anxious to add money back into this budget expense line, so.
Right, and we talked about using the 3 math coaches out of Title II, but they can't be an interventionist in Title II. Title II is very clear about being for professional development, which is the purpose behind this. It always has been. We know that elementary teachers, remember, elementary teachers are generalists, right? They teach reading and social studies and science and spelling and handwriting and whatever, right? They don't have a deep background in mathematics. So one of the ways in which you improve is by developing the skills of your instructors, and that was the concept behind the coach. Now, again, I know some schools use them to provide some intervention, and I know that, but the intent was for coaching teachers.
Go ahead, Ms. Walsh.
if we split the positions, if we took the same amount of Title II funds but split it over 5 positions, could they then continue to do a mix of coaching and intervention?
Well, my.
Like paid 50%, yeah.
Right, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Could they, Title II could pay for the portion that was coaching, to answer your question.
Does that create a reporting issue? I mean, I just know from auditing and stuff that could be a
It
big issue.
requires that the teacher provide us with the data, because we're gonna be audited, and they're gonna wanna see the time that they spent. You know, I worked at the department, that's what we did. When you worked on a project, you had to put your timesheet in for that project, and you couldn't use that project to do a state job. In other words, something that was general to the state. So same with our teachers, and if we just had desk audits, as you know, we just finished with Title I, we can't do that. So it gets, I know, these are great ideas, but they are a little bit more complex.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And I think having a mechanism to be able to see how we're meeting benchmarks in teacher understanding through the use of this resource could be a way that maybe this school board could feel comfortable putting $180,000 back into the budget, because we would have a mechanism to know that we're doing what needs to be done with this position. I feel like that boost of confidence, instead of it being like, okay, you get one more year, do whatever you were doing before. I mean, clearly what they were doing has been effective. It's the only advocacy that we've received during the course of this budget deliberation. So the need is felt, and you know, so.
My only response to that, Sarah, with all due respect, is there were positions that were single positions. Like, I would like to see the social worker go back to Runlet. I don't want to lose that position over there. That's a viable position. So I'm part of the big grant that we submitted. You know, the federal grant to right to Washington. That position is in there. I have my fingers crossed, because I think that position is essential. But we didn't hear an outcry here because it was one person in one position and
No, that's fair.
affecting a very small group. So
Yeah.
there were other areas that I mean, I would, you know,
Push back on that.
push back on, but I also knew
Fair,
that we were
yeah.
trying to balance taxes and lack of revenue.
Yeah.
Ms. Hastings.
Superintendent Murphy, I hate to put you on the spot, but I think I'm going to.
Get in line.
Well, actually, that is appropriate.
She's the
She's the one who reports to us. Determinations on teaching and a number of teachers
appreciate
and
your-
staffing are really her
I don't like
area.
doing it, but I'm going to do
All
it.
right, go ahead.
If it came down to 5 math coaches or no math coaches, as the superintendent, what would you advise?
That is putting her on the spot. Oh my God.
Now,
There's no right answer to that question.
Yeah, there's no right answer.
and I
Your opinion, I guess, is what I'm looking for. What?
but I think that also has to be included in 5 math coaches and no art teacher, no assistant principal.
Half an art teacher.
Half an art teacher, no half of an art teacher. I'm not sure which half.
Right.
And no assistant principal
Right.
versus 3 math coaches, and that is kind of the
That's
trade-off
the-
we have
yeah,
to.
the balance.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm
She's
sure
got
I
it.
got all that.
I'm sure she's got it.
And a partridge in a pear tree.
Yes. Yeah. Rock soup.
Yeah,
Stone soup,
yeah,
stone
rock
soup.
Yeah, right. You've taken away some really viable things. I mean, it's, you know, again, nobody was here to talk about the assistant principal except those, 2 or 3 administrators at the high school. You didn't have the public outcry because nobody wants to hire an administrator, right? But that's what keeps your building, the culture and the climate of the building in check, because you have the personnel to do that. I thought the plan to bring in 3 was a good plan with Chantel, but obviously the teachers are concerned. I've heard some of the teachers won't go to another school. They don't want to, and I understand that. They're very comfortable where they are. They know their staff. I get all that. I understand that. So I thought the 3 was a good plan to share and have Chantel deploy. Now remember, Chantel was doing a lot of this work prior to these math coaches, so, you know, and I don't ever, I always see 3 plus Chantel. She facilitates, she does training of the math coaches, so that does take her out of, you know, direct service to teachers, but she's in classrooms modeling lessons, and which is what our coaches do. That was the intent. How is that for a
Well, as
political
a
answer?
follow-up, I wonder,
Balanced.
now that Chantel's been coaching coaches, if that would change how she would coach the teachers, if we took out that step of the coaches, she would still be coaching teachers, because she did that through professional development.
She does it both. She does it both as a professional development. Remember, we talked about training. We run summer programs every year. And we've been using our PD days to do OGAP training, which is the math training, right? And so she's been doing that since I've been here. And that will continue. That's not gonna, we have new teachers coming in, you know, we're gonna need to do that with them. And, you know, teachers wanna brush up on their skills, so they do different topics. You know, sometimes it's addition, subtraction, it's multiplication, it's division, depending on what the units of study are that she does with the teachers. That will continue. Her modeling lessons will continue. It can't be 100% like the math coach, because she has to facilitate trainings. In-house trainings, our
Right.
trainings, not
Our
out of
trainings, right.
district.
No, our, yeah.
I don't want you to think she's off doing other people.
Okay.
Question with regards, I'm sorry, Tom, you can go.
Can we zoom in a little bit and just tell us more about what is it going to look like with 3 versus 5? How is it gonna look? What's gonna change?
Well, one of the things, you know, we brought up, one of the coaches has a certification that's only early education, so she can only do K-1-2. So, you know, because we could have that person focus on K-1-2 teachers. It didn't
Right.
matter which building she was in, right? So Chantel has discussed that idea with Kim, that we focus on a grade level approach. So I'm a math coach for K-1-2, so that's where she focuses her efforts. At Millbrook and at the other schools, Krister and Abbott and Beaver, that have K-1-2s. But it would need more than that, because that's a lot. But that's how we would determine that. And the coach, all the coaches could be divided up by schools, Krister and Abbott, and shared at Beaver Meadow and Broken Ground in Millbrook. And then we have one more that we had at Beaver Meadow and shared with the middle school.
So I'm gonna dig a little deeper. What would you be missing? What would next year look like without them, without those additional 2 that this year looks like?
Well,
I mean, is it?
you know, I think that people brought that up tonight. I think it's the relationships that they built with the teachers. It's their school. They know their teachers. They're comfortable moving into those classrooms, providing that modeling, providing that sometimes it's co-teaching, you know, they'll work together to teach lessons, because that coach can share strategies with the teacher. The teacher can observe. So I think for our staff, it really is about the relationships they developed, the place where they know their teachers are at. So, you know, everybody's at a problem, and I don't know this for a fact, but I'm of the belief that teachers are at different levels. And so, you know that as a coach. So you know that I need to do this kind of work, more how to use manipulatives with this teacher. And maybe I don't have to do that with another teacher because they already know that, but I can do something else with them. It's not, there's not, you know, as you know, Tom, it's not one shoe fits all. It just,
Right.
because we differentiate. How's that? We have to differentiate the training not only for kids in terms of instruction, but for our educators. We hear teachers go to a workshop, we have great feedback, and everybody loved the workshop, and then we have an element that didn't like it. Well, they already knew about it and they were bored, you know. But you don't always know that when you're, you know, when they're signing up. So it's
In
like
my
that.
mind, I'm just trying to rationalize
Yeah.
$180,000 or so, offsetting we don't have a great deal of data that whatever's happening is really actually making a great difference. We have some. And I don't, I'm just throwing questions out there that, you know, I think the public has a right to hear some answers to it.
Sure, and we have other grants, but I can't really, I thought about Title I, and we talked to John, you know, because we could use Title I, especially in a Title I school. We could use that, but we're just not sure yet what that grant looks like for Title I, so and I won't know for a little bit. Even the IDEA grant in special ed, we could use some of that money to help offset it. So, but we have no idea what's coming down. Now, we don't think, I think you saw from Jack's slides, we know that we're not going to lose any money. We don't believe we're going to have a loss of revenues in the federal entitlements. I haven't seen that at all. It's been pretty flat, if anything. A little bit extra when we were in the pandemic, but for the most part, it's been pretty steady.
Mr. Weinberg.
So Superintendent, I know you said generally you believe the elementary schools are about 6 months now behind. Can you say what that is compared to previously? Was it a year and a half?
Oh, I would say in some cases, youngsters were a year behind, and even greater than that. I mean, as Pam said, you know, they missed a solid year and a half, and there were youngsters, as you know, just because of the inequities that existed, that students didn't have opportunities that other youngsters had, and so those kids missed out, I mean, an incredible amount. We saw that when we have kids that came in and didn't know their letters, didn't know their numbers, and just basic things that you would have anticipated coming in. So they have closed the gap, and both in reading and in math. They've worked really hard, and we will be presenting all the data for the instructional committee. It's just we hadn't finished. You know, we had some delays with people out sick. So, but we're ready to do that, and Tom and Kim and her team are ready to present.
Thank you. And I know Jack presented that speculating there could be an additional $3 million in revenue. Is that integrated into this budget, or is that not?
It's not integrated directly. What it is we remember when we talked about, I think on the 6th, using your trust funds in one-time money to try to get where you think might be enough when the state passes its budget. We would get some adequacy. We could replenish it. This way it'd be a smooth transition. So not directly, but that was the forethought in where this is. So really, any reductions is really going to be a reduction from the transfer as well as the reduction in the position with no change.
Thank you.
That's what I'm envisioning. But if you say still take the money out but cut the thing, the tax rate continues to go lower.
Mr. Croto.
So Jack, what is $180,000 added to our current picture that we already decided upon look like, and how far off of our target would we be?
So the local rate would go up about 4 cents. So you'd be at 2.91 versus 2.61, or $12.
And
Total
have you
tax
done
rate?
the $300,000 home?
Yeah,
part
so that'd be 183.
versus
Because you'd go
174.
174.
174.
So, yeah, you'd go up.
That's state and local, right?
That's state and local, yeah.
Do you want to?
So the local would go up $12, right?
Because
So
it's a
you'd
little
be-
closer to that
Yep.
one level above where we landed.
My only other issue, and I'll say this publicly, is we had 2 public hearings and we talked about a target dollar amount. And for the folks who cared to look at that and listened, that's what they think. And here we are rethinking. And I just want folks to know that we are rethinking, and that's okay. That's what we do. But we are cognizant of the fact that we came forward and said, you know, we have this other amount that we talked about.
Go ahead, Mark.
So in listening to all of this and not having a super strong opinion one way or another, how I look at it is what we're trying to do is please as many people as we can. And I don't mean please by giving them cake and all this, but okay, we can keep some of these services and keep this and have a new administrator here. And now everyone's getting a little bit. And sometimes, actually, it was Mrs. Holy, my first term on the school board, said if you're not pissing off half the people, you're not doing your job. So I'm sorry that that's so blunt, but do we need to hold off on an assistant principal for a year and have half an art teacher so that we can keep that money for the math students? Does that make the high school people angry? Maybe. But if it's the right way to spend the money, I don't feel good adding money back into the budget. I just feel like it's disingenuous. I think that if we can look at ways to make this happen, I think it needs to happen. It was incredibly well supported by a variety of people. I just think maybe the high school will be mad at us for a year. But so what? Because it's going to make their lives easier 8 or 9 years down the road when these kids get to high school and they can add and subtract and all that sort of thing. I think we could go round and round and round about how to make it work and what do we add in and do we just put more money in the budget? No, maybe we just need to make hard decisions and you know, you've come up with an actual plan and sometimes those decisions aren't easy, but if what we want to do is have 5 math coaches, then that's what we need to do. And we need to see what do we put off for a year to make that happen.
Go ahead, Mr. Cogman.
I would just remind people that we added the half person for art because we wanted to get kids out of study halls, for example. So there's a cost in taking that away, obviously.
Right. No, I understand that.
Just to clarify, Mr. Reardon testified that he didn't need a full position.
Yeah, we're
I
not
understand.
So that's where that came from.
But we would
And-
leave the half in.
Yeah, the half would
Yes,
stay in.
leave the half in.
But we've used the other half.
But we don't
in.
have, we have a
Okay.
full in now, I believe.
Okay.
So does that affect any timeline with regards to increasing the number of credits you need for graduation? Because those kids have to go to a class, right? There are classes that people have to
Not
do.
one
They
year,
have to
no.
get those credits.
No.
Okay, that was
That's
the
a good
question.
question.
I guess my other question is I'd like to hear from the superintendent about what she thinks the effect of delaying the principal or assistant principal
The fourth one.
position would have, if any. Because frankly, you know, we're talking about $180,000. I suspect that we might not even have to worry about the half a position for the art
Maybe.
teacher. But any thoughts on delaying the fourth position for a year?
You thought I put you on the spot.
That's not a super.
It's our job.
Position either.
That, what?
That's not that position hasn't received the support that the math ones have.
Well, of course not. I mean, I know how you feel about administrators, but no, listen to me. There's not a contingent of people that are gonna come out and support that position, like, we have 300 teachers. Do you know what I'm saying? So, you're not, that hasn't been an issue. They haven't been
So
in
answer
here.
his question.
I know, but I couldn't resist. Sorry.
Don't you love me sitting next to you now?
No. I'm trying to be good.
Yeah.
I think it's a tough question. You know, they had a half. They had somebody who helped them with that, with discipline. Obviously, it's all around the culture and climate. And you know, we lost positions. We I don't know, some people won't mind this, but we don't have an SRO up there. We had somebody coming in, you know, when they can send somebody in. We have a social worker that's on the chopping block up there too, because that was not in the budget. So, you know, we're losing. We're not just.
Right.
We lost positions here. We only have a 1.39 budget increase. With salaries and benefits that went double that. So
Actually,
you
more
had to
than double.
cut somewhere. You have reduced.
Could I just provide clarity, though, to Bob's thing? Remember, you're eliminating a position for the assistant principal. So if the assistant principal doesn't happen, then this position, I'm going to assume, stays.
Yep.
Also, the opening that you have now, you won't have next year. So in order to slide a person, it could be a RIF versus a move.
No, we're talking the fourth assistant, the one that doesn't exist yet.
The one that doesn't exist yet.
We're not talking about an existing.
You're talking about the 220-day position. Yeah,
Right.
that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
That's what we
Because it's a
explained.
vacancy currently.
Nobody's in that now.
I I gotta say, I'm still kinda hung up on, is another year gonna do this for us? I mean, I understand people wanna have math coaches. There are a lot of things that a lot of people would like to have. If it is the view of the board that we're gonna do 5, I wanna make it really clear that it's my personal view that I don't wanna have this discussion again next year,
Right.
you know? Not happening.
Ms. Hastings and then Mr. Weinberg.
I'm wondering if we could look at some other positions that we've also looked at adding. I think we have a new OT, family literacy facilitator. Is that still in the budget?
Mhm.
And the preschool teacher, adding a new preschool program. Those are 3 other positions that we haven't really talked a lot about either. All necessary in the long run, all important, but it might not come down to just a half art teacher or an administrator. I don't know. How do we? Any thoughts on that? I'm just throwing it out there.
Jack, could you show us where the posted budget? These are the ones you originally put in there. I'd like-
They're still in.
I'd like to
Remember,
see-
all this stuff is still in.
All of these are still in?
Yeah, that's
These?
what you put,
How did we get
absolutely.
all of them?
Because they're all supported by transfer
Oh,
from your trust funds.
many of them
Yeah,
are supported
yeah.
by.
The only thing that's out is the SRO, but all these are funded through transfers from your trust funds. These are all still in there. So if you reduce the position, we're gonna reduce the transfer. So you still meet your goal of the tax rate. It's just that there isn't gonna be
Well-
any savings per se.
Well, but I'm concerned that, some of these positions I thought were going to grant.
Well, again, I'll go to the slide that does move them. So let me move to there. So there, those positions, yes, they get moved. But all the positions in general it's just a funding mechanism.
But the other ones, so then go back to the other ones too, because if we're transferring funds out of our trust funds to be able to support those positions for this coming year, that's a one-time, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not
Gotta
so.
be a one-time.
Yeah, I don't mind using our trust funds to balance it out peaks and valleys, that's what they're there for. But if these are all brand-new positions that we have not approved yet, this just kicking the can down the road one more year. In my opinion.
Yep.
And I don't know that I want to do that, because next year we'll have this, as to Mr. Cotton's thing, exactly the same discussion, and people won't want to give them up next year any more than they want to give them up next, as a matter of fact, even less.
Oh, that's the cut.
I didn't know if anyone else had
Go ahead.
any response to Ms. Hastings, because I was going to go back to the math coaches, yeah.
I mean, I would say that we have discussed those positions, the OT, the preschool teacher, those are, in my opinion, very necessary positions. I personally, even though I am advocating for more math coaches, I would not do that at the expense of those other
That's
positions.
what I'm looking for.
Like,
Yeah, agreed.
I feel like
Yeah.
we are in a position where we are operating, razor thin as it is, and we're doing our best to position teachers and educators where they need to be. I think this is a great plan that we've come up with, because these are places where there is need. I just really wanted to have the conversation, is it effective for us to create a compromise with the math coach position? If it ends up being ineffective because of the shift and the fact that it is a temporary 1-year issue. So how do we mitigate that risk of, killing the momentum, essentially, which would be to restore 2 more positions, in my opinion. Go ahead.
Jack, do we anticipate needing to take away substantial funds from the instructional trust fund? Currently, there's about $1 million. We're looking to withdraw $80,000 for this year. If there was an additional, say, $170,000 withdrawn from that, bring it to $250,000, what
So-
would that look like?
So we originally had 80. Then we added another 300 because see the extraordinary needs grant, the district OT, the Abbott Downing and DEIJ. If you remember, when you got that money in October, we said we're going to put it into the trust fund because there needed to be a plan for it. That's state money. You got 500 some thousand next year. It's well, under the current law, you get about 404,000 next year. Okay, that is where that money's coming from, and it's sitting in
so the
instructional
extraordinary-
trusts because we knew it was going to be used for education. So that's how we're funding
so the
it.
million, so we're not actually only taking out 880,000, we're taking out 400.
Over 400,
Over
yeah.
400. Okay, so that, okay.
So that's where that'll come
Got it.
down to.
Wouldn't that have been so nice?
But
Can
you still have a good bit of
wanna
money
ask
in
a
there, and as
question
I
about
said,
the extraordinary
if
needs
this
grant,
is the
so-
budget, you're taking the risk based on what's legislation that's coming down, and the
Speculation,
increase.
yeah.
This money comes out in October, we put it back,
Reimburse.
if things come to fruition.
Okay.
If not, it's a risky budget,
So
that's all.
bit of a gamble.
Yep.
You're gambling money a little bit on speculating. Go ahead.
I just want to respond to Mr. Cotton. I appreciate where you are, and I agree with Ms. Robinson that we need a plan. And I think it needs to be a really granular plan that's evaluating where specific teachers and where specific classrooms are, so we know where we need to concentrate our resources most. But I just go back to, there's a lot on here, but our fundamental responsibility is to make sure our kids are getting the education that they need. And I've, seen our test scores, and we're not there. And math is one place we're not there. And if this help, it seems to be helping, but another year, if it comes back and we continue to see improvement, then we may need to think about how we structure this in the long term, and that might be a good, solid conversation to have. I think we go forward as a one-year plan with a written ramp down that Chantel gives us by the end of this school year, so that we know how it will go forward next year. But I think if math is where one of the areas we're struggling, and I think it was a lot easier to read a book to your kid during the pandemic than to do math homework with them. And that's for a lot of families. And so I think that's where you saw a lot of kids fall off more.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Can I ask a question about the extraordinary needs grant? Like these three positions that are being funded by it, the district OT, the preschool teacher, and the DEIJ, I consider those three sort of like those hills I'm willing to die on moving forward. So my concern is, as we're looking at this slide, how long do we anticipate that the extraordinary needs grant can be utilized for these three before we need to absorb them into the general fund?
That's just 1 year.
So will the extraordinary needs grant be something that the district is, you said we'll probably have 400,000 next year if everything comes to fruition?
The way the current law sits, it's 404,000. We've already been given the numbers.
Okay.
But we took the money that was unanticipated because of when they passed the budget and did what
And
they
put
did.
it away.
And put it away, you're now pulling that one-time money
And
out.
then we'll just replace it with whatever comes in.
If it all comes
it-
to fruition to the good, then it'll go back, and then you can make the decision, because now the general fund is picking up those positions,
Right.
and it's a matter of deeming them, are they 1 year or are they gonna stay?
I mean, to me, it feels like three essential positions that can't remain on a one-year basis. So I do want to take those positions into account while we're thinking about this. I do see those three as essential to the district as a whole. I wanted to clarify that and voice it.
But you see those as essential, whereas the teachers may not see them as essential. and see the
Agreed,
math
yeah.
coaches as essential.
Yeah.
Because when I asked teacher, I said, the teacher was here and testified, I said, how would you pay for this? And they're like, get rid of the grants writer. Doesn't do anything. It's an administrative position. So everybody sees,
Yeah.
everyone sees the world through
Yeah.
their own.
Through their own lens.
Well, from the position which they're in, and that's to be expected and natural.
Agreed, yeah.
I am, that's why we have to make hard decisions here, actually, is when we sit there. But I think this is a good discussion. I tend to, let the administration, weigh in on all of these things. But I don't like the idea of, I'm concerned, as you just brought up, is we're gonna have 15 positions and, $1 million next year just thrown up there for, so we're
Right.
still gonna have to face that. But it's what's the best decision right now and for this year. And then next year, quite frankly, there'll be another board and we'll all have to sit here, and those of us who are still on it, to do it again, so. Go ahead, Ms. Wilson.
Superintendent Murphy, the structure at the high school this year is 2 assistants and a CRTC director, right?
Three,
No.
3.
and a CRTC.
Each one of them has a commons,
Okay.
and there's about 500 kids in each of the commons assigned to the
So
commons.
3 assistants and a CRTC director.
Yeah, the CRTC principal on the other side with all the
And
programs.
under this budget, there would still be 3 assistants.
Yes,
Just not a 4th assistant.
well,
If we don't include the.
that's correct,
Okay.
if you don't include
So
it.
it would be the same structure they're working on under this year.
There would be no changes at the high school
Yeah.
next year.
None.
Okay, thank you.
So Jack, I'm gonna follow that up and say, can you just give us a number? Can you give us a number of that, because that assistant was kind of a
Well, remember,
sub-assistant
it's
or something?
you're at 167 for an assistant principal. The position goes away is 147. There's $20,000 in savings. There isn't, you're not freeing up 140 or 160,000.
Well,
Because
we are,
they're all
Wait a
set.
minute.
in this budget, we are.
No,
If we take away that
Oh, okay.
assistant
You're not.
principal,
new one?
because the position we just talked about that would go away because the AP's coming, there's the cut. The ad is on the other slide. The net difference is only 20 grand. That's why, and then there's a place for that person to go in a position. There's a lot of things that are in place
Oh,
for that to
right.
happen.
Trade
That's why.
changes that, yeah.
Next
May I-
year,
may I ask
may
a
not.
question on that, follow up to that? That position we're talking about,
yeah,
is that in the budget?
the AP position is
The
in,
one that.
and the
is-
reduction is out. It's right there.
But I mean, to follow, the position that is currently unfilled, is it budgeted for? And is that
Why
in the
are you
budget?
looking like that?
I'm confused. Because if we got rid of the assistant principal position and kept that cut, we'd still have $167,000.
No, you have a
to spend.
$20,000.
Well, no, we
savings.
keep no
keep
one's
the
jobs change. We
cut.
don't get rid of any positions.
Yeah, but
It
you got to
stays
keep the
same.
person. Unless
There's
you're
a
getting rid of the
person in it
person.
now.
You're getting rid of the other. So you're getting rid of the AP and that job. Because remember, one was a trade-off.
Right, but we still have $167,000.
Let's use the trade-off for the math
budgeted.
Budgeted, so why didn't we have $20,000 budgeted?
But we don't have $20,000 budgeted for a new assistant principal. We have $167,000. Some of it's offset by
Offset
a
by
cut,
that.
but we still have $167,000 in the budget that if we didn't spend on an assistant principal,
But I took the cut in this. So there's
You
only
took this
20,000. Right.
we'd still keep this cut.
Then you're cutting that position.
And using the money that we
What
budgeted for
he's
that
saying is
position
it's
for
a
something else.
$20,000 difference between
Yeah.
what's up there cut.
Yeah,
and
it's a
what isn't.
$20,000 cut because I'll let you talk while I think out how to explain it.
And if we need to go into non-public, please let us know.
Get the the
Go on.
tiered thing that the high school showed us, so we know which positions we're talking about? Remember, they gave us the vision, the board. that
Oh,
would-
the flow chart.
The flow chart of the new restructured,
So, well,
The organizational chart that had that position reporting to another,
down at the very bottom.
yeah,
That I don't think there's anybody in right
I
now.
don't know. I don't think that position doesn't exist. Go ahead,
Right.
Mr. Croto.
Okay, so I'm coming at this from a different perspective.
Okay.
Having been a building principal for a number of years. We're gonna lose Mike Reardon to a retirement. We're gonna add Tim, and Tim's gonna be brand new to this position. Those two changes right there doesn't really necessitate a great time to make more changes as well. I mean,
It doesn't, but Tim asked for them.
Pardon me?
Tim asked for them. He came to the instructional committee in the fall and asked for these changes.
Yeah.
So he's on board with this. This is sort of his vision of what the high school administration would look like.
No, so are you agreeing with me or not?
No, I'm saying, I agree, it's not a great time, but it's Tim's vision of what his administration would look like at the high school.
Right, I'm just
What he's
saying,
saying
let's
is it's
not
changes.
move, I take a position away from that vision, okay? So I'm thinking that, we ought to just be careful that we don't take that position totally off the table, because there's a vision there that they've, put into that program, in addition to those two other changes that are gonna be major changes. Loss of Mike and add Tim as a principal versus.
Well, then a new assistant principal, that, whoever that might be, that will replace where Tim was. The administrative team at the high school will have a lot of changes, regardless of whether or not they have a new.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if we should add yet another.
So, Mr.
The change we'd
Dunn,
be making hasn't happened yet, so it's not like we're taking something away that's
the
there.
math coaches are gonna cost $180K.
About that, yeah.
The assistant principal point that Ms. Walsh brought up is gonna knock that down to, that'll give us 20, so that'll give us 160. A half an art teacher will be 40.
So if you add
50?
167 and you cut 147, that's $20,000 gain, right?
Yeah,
One way or another. But you're not eliminating that other position.
But you have,
Go ahead.
all right, so in your cuts,
Yep.
you've cut 147,000.
Yep.
But can you go to the positions you're adding? There's 167,000
That I
there.
added.
Yeah, so you added. So if we took that away, we would still have $167,000.
No, because you have to put the other position back that they gave up. Unless
Why do
you
we
don't-
have to give it back?
Because otherwise you have to fire that person.
Well, no.
No, there's
So-
another job.
Part of the reasons, well, that's.
I know, we are going
we
round
had,
and
we had
round.
to go into,
What you want to do is you want to reduce that one position and move the position to the one that I indicated to you earlier.
Now that's
And then
different
not
story.
fill
That's what I'm
the,
talking about.
and not fill the assistant
Yes.
principal's position,
For you.
and so you save $147,000.
in other words, what you're saying
Yeah.
is that
Yep.
we keep one,
I get it.
we, essentially what we do, what you're essentially doing is keeping the Tim's assistant principal position vacant, unfilled for you.
Yeah.
Right.
And that will do it. Go ahead, Mr. Cotton.
I'd just like to remind all of us maybe that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Superintendent, but you, the administration, felt comfortable with 3 math coaches. Chantel felt comfortable with 3 math coaches. I understand other people disagree, but I question whether we ought to defer, or I wonder whether we ought to defer to, the experts that we rely on to tell us what they think they need.
Go ahead, Mr. Weinberg.
Going back to Mr. Croto's point, I am inclined to support his idea as well because I want to support the incoming principal, and so I don't support the notion of completely removing the assistant principal.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Do you support the idea of keeping just 3 math coaches then?
Yes.
Who's next?
Maybe it's time for a vote. We have time for
Let's
discussion.
wait at least for our other member to come back.
I'll be right back.
We were initially faced with cutting these positions completely, the 5 math coaches. The money's gone.
Yeah,
And,
money's
and we,
gone.
and we figured out a way not to do that. So maybe it isn't perfect and ideal, but it's already 3 math coaches more than we thought we'd have a few months ago. So it's easy sometimes to go down a path and see, oh, this would be so great, this is what has to happen. I mean, I go round and round with it, having taught at every grade level in my career, all of these things are valuable and warrant inclusion in a budget. But we were thinking there would be no more math coaches just a few months ago, and now we still have 3. So
I'm the same way, Barb. I feel like I'm floating in the wind.
Yeah.
I'm back and forth on it. I don't know. I don't know what the right thing to do is.
It's difficult because we all want to have the best teachers and things for our kids. It's just that that's very, very expensive, and this is not necessarily a time to be jacking up the, tax rates a lot to do those things. So that's why it's a difficult situation. Personally, I'm kind of in agreement with Ms. Higgins and Mr. Cotton in the fact that I don't want to increase the taxes, and I do tend to support the decisions of the superintendent. That's what we hire for. So, go ahead, Mr. Croto.
Jack, how preposterous is this that we consider that if we did get money from the state in the next few months, that we could consider putting these positions then?
Well, I think anything.
I mean, I know that some of it's earmarked for payback.
I think anything's possible. I think it was more for trying to get into the recruitment time, which is now. And that's why I think some of the risk
Gotcha.
that you're agreeing to take
Yep.
right now is being out there, getting what we can for
Yep.
replacement staff. On the other side of that, if they are existing people that take those positions, they'll take a leave of absence from their position, but then we got to fill it with somebody. So they're the ones, that's where the risk is right now.
Gotcha. Yep.
So if it's something you'd want to do, now would probably be beneficial, and then you see where it lies.
Other comments?
I'm still completely understanding that the administration has worked hard and that 3 is better than none. I continue to worry that this next year will just not be executed to the degree that we would like the math coaches to, execute their duties. And I do think that, and no tomato, nobody has Rotten Tomatoes. Okay, I do think that adding $180,000 to the budget still puts us in a modest range. It doesn't have such an impact as to be overly painful. So I would continue.
A motion.
So, Ms. Meeker, are you making a motion?
Oh, sure, why not? This will be my first one. I move that we increase the number of math coaches from 3 to 5, covering all of the elementary schools for the following year.
Second.
Did you get that?
I'm working on it.
Okay, let me
For
know.
math coaches from 3 to 5 for the 23-24 school year.
Correct, yeah.
And then seconded by Ms. Walsh.
Thank you.
Can
Further
I do a
discussion?
friendly amendment?
You-
That part of the expectation of increasing to 5 coaches, that there is a semblance of strategy or plan and some kind of assessment to make sure that our teachers are gaining the tools that they need through the addition of these positions. There has to be a mechanism for tracking how our improvement is going.
Amend your friendly amendment?
Please do.
That we ask the administration to present a wind-down plan for the math coaches by the end of this school year.
Agreed. Yeah.
And
I
Ms.
would-
Hastings gets a chance to sort all that out. I'll let her read it.
Sorry, Brenda.
No, that's okay.
Down. Where's Gina?
We can wait.
A wind
We're
down
patient.
Plan for the math coaches by the end of this school year.
Does Ms. Meeker, I guess, concur with that?
Well, I have to wait until,
Right, we're
I'm gonna
waiting.
let her read it, and then everybody can, I'm gonna let everybody, all 3 people involved in this particular motion to weigh in.
All right, I have to increase the number of math coaches from 3 to 5 for the 23-24 school year, with a strategy or plan for tracking success by asking admin to provide a wind-down plan.
And evidence of the assessments.
Okay, and evidence of the
Yeah.
assessments.
Yeah.
Okay. I
So
missed that
leave
part.
by the end of this
Thanks,
year
Marcy.
was the last part.
Yeah, by the end of this school year.
By the end of this school year, okay.
I am amenable to those amendments to the level at which it is realistic to expect all of those things from the administration.
Good. All right, so the motion has been made and seconded. Is there further discussion? Go ahead, Mr. Proto.
At this very moment, I still don't know how I'm gonna vote. I have just one little devil on this side and one little angel on this side.
You aren't alone. I feel similarly.
You know, and there's no question that all of us sit here because we care about kids. But there are other people in the world, there are taxpayers in the city of Concord there who have done their due diligence with their taxes. I don't know right now how many kids are gonna be affected directly or indirectly by adding 2 more. By the same token, it's not a great deal of money. So there you go. There's some food for thought by the time your name gets called.
We're also losing a lot of other positions to ESSER funds going
Well, that's the
away.
other thing that
So
came to
why
my
is this
mind,
more
is I had
important than
asked
the C
specifically for
science
Kathleen
program?
and Jack to
The sea
go
science
back
program
and,
is in the budget.
It's
and
in-
tell us
it's
what
in-
they
For one.
wanted to do.
They're all,
And this is what they came
for
up
some
with.
reason I thought it wasn't. I mean,
It's an easy
don't laugh at me.
So, I know, well, no, I have a question. We put more PD money in this budget. How much more?
80,000, Jack?
89,000.
So is this where we want to spend our PD money? Take that 80,000 out of those other ones and put it into math coaches? That other PD?
Is that legal?
Are we allowed?
Sure we
it's
can.
general
It's our
funds.
money.
had
We didn't have
zero
any,
before.
hardly any in before. Yeah, the thing is that the question we must ask ourselves at that point is, are the math coaches worth taking it away from all the others? Because that's what we're saying about some of these other positions. Are the math coaches worth taking that money away? Because, or, as has been presented, increasing the taxes on the people that are out there by that amount. I just asked that question and then wanted to think about it before I vote. Any other discussion or questions?
I kind of want to keep discussion going because I'm not sure.
Is it-
Well,
Go ahead.
we don't have to decide tonight.
We do, and that is correct. We can table
Okay.
this till
Meeting
Wednesday.
Wednesday.
Okay.
So, if someone would move to table it, we can table it to Wednesday, but we will have to decide on Wednesday. But it would give us all a few more days to think about the impact.
Well, I think the nice thing is we've raised a bunch of questions. Sorry.
We're good at
We've
that.
raised a bunch of questions. Maybe we'll hear now more from some
Correct.
people in the public and.
Yeah.
Public request for a roll call on the issue?
I was gonna do that anyways.
I would have asked.
I beat you to it.
There's a request for the roll call. However, I will make a motion to table
Second.
this until Wednesday. Is there a sec, there is a second?
Yeah.
So the tabling motion takes precedence over the other motion. So all those in favor of tabling it signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? We will table this until Wednesday. Go ahead, Mr. Moore.
I don't know, Jonathan,
I was going to,
or I don't know. Who seconded that?
I seconded it. While we continue to ruminate on this,
Jim, Jonathan.
and since we're looking at this as 1 year and somewhat basing off the state, if it is possible, Mr. Dunn, about which trust fund these 2 positions could come from to cover 1 year only, that you think would be the most beneficial.
Take it out of the instructional. You got 500 and some thousand from the extraordinary degrees. Spend it all.
Okay,
That
thank you.
would do it.
Thank you.
And then I will, I made the motion to table. I will also publicly state that I will,
No.
I will
Okay.
make, Did we voted on it?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, let's table it.
It's a long night
Since
already.
Since I made the motion to table, I will just publicly announce at this point that I will ask for roll call vote as a member of the board for any of these spending items that we discuss on Wednesday, because I think it's fair for us to be as transparent as possible. So if that reassures some of the public, then so be it. So that they may not come on Wednesday if they don't need to, but if someone, and then the other thing I will say is, as I say in most all of these meetings, is that you don't have to come for public comment. You can send emails. We all read them. You can call us too. I think all of our contact information. You can send us a regular letter, but make it quick, because I don't think it'll get delivered in time. No knocks on the USPS. So at the end of this meeting, I believe Mr. Dunn will put up our contact information for anybody who needs it.
Absolutely.
We encourage that. All right, further discussion on the budget for this evening.
We got an email today about the preschool program. I'm not sure, Superintendent, if you've had time to review the email before. It was discussing that.
Did you get this email, Superintendent?
Yeah, I checked. Do you have any information regarding?
Well,
What was
as you
discussed in
know,
it?
the program, we originally had a preschool program that was part of the Career and Technical Center. Via Perkins grant, that's not allowable. It's just, for childcare, and although they use it, for their students to observe and so forth. And given the need in the district around, you've heard from John, around the number of students that have been identified through Child Find, and our desire to be able to service those youngsters, John created the program at Abbott Downing. It was in your budget to have a teacher, and we would close that program and run a program at Abbott Downing. We would still have an opportunity for some students to participate, typical students participate. The other issue that was brought up in your email was around the amount of time. These are 3- and 4-year-olds, and so the number of hours would be lessened by this program, rather than the I saw one was like 27 hours, so it was more like a yeah. So rather than and yes, it did support some families in town. There were also some people that didn't live in town that were in that program. So the new program will be for Concord residents and both typical and atypical kids.
Thank you for the information.
Can I just clarify one thing quickly? You very kindly said we desire to service these kids, and a lot of our Child Find kids, we are legally bound to service. It's not like we want to have a nice preschool for everybody. We are legally bound to service those kids that qualify for any sort of special needs services and that sort of thing. It ties our hands in a way that people don't often understand.
That's why the OT was in that budget,
Yeah.
because of the demand around OT with the youngsters. And meeting those needs. I think you heard from John, and the number of referrals and the number of tests that we've had to do this year around occupational therapy, which is a part of the preschool program. That the parent I read was upset, but John didn't make it final, and Ann didn't make it final, because we were trying to get through this budget to make sure we had personnel that we could actually have a program. So we were kind of caught in a timeline. We understand that. There's certainly a huge need in the city for appropriate early childhood programs. And when I say early childhood, I'm talking about 0 to 5.
Go ahead, Ms. Roberts.
So should we be anticipating that position that is now being funded through the Extraordinary Needs Grant should be put into the general fund in our next budget deliberation?
Well, we're going to have to look at that, because the demand hasn't lessened.
Right. I mean, it feels like an essential
Right.
resource. Like you said, we are legally bound
We are.
to accommodate the students that exist within our district. So this extraordinary needs grant accommodation is exceptionally temporary for that position. And I would argue a couple of others.
No, Ms. Robertson, I think that's where I sometimes get held up is it is in a way an illusion, like masquerading for the next gen. I can't speak for the next board, but I know that I see the DIJ position, I see the preschool position as more so general fund position, and I think it's hard to, because then does that mean we increase it significantly more next year? I don't, or what are those decisions? So I think those are, I struggle with those.
Can I ask a question with regards to the CRTC students, which some parents may be watching, CRTC students who were involved in that educational program are still going to have the opportunity to get their educational training as far as
Absolutely,
CRTC. And I just want to, you know, when we talk about this, it sort of sounds like we're cutting those folks in the high school at the CRTC program out, but they're not. They're still going to have
Right.
their educational opportunities, and that program is still going to continue. And I
Right,
just want to be
and
very
that's,
clear.
and that's only one aspect of their
Right.
training or their internships, if you will. They're all over in school buildings across the city.
Right. I just wanted to be very clear for anybody watching
Yep.
at home who may have a little bit of a panic on the CRTC educational program. It's still very strong and robust as it has always been. Okay. But that was a good question. Other questions or comments? We'll have a full meeting on Wednesday.
So that I'm clear for Wednesday, there's all the contact information.
Thank you.
If it's
There's
clear
the
as mud, I
contact.
don't know, but.
Can I please add that my phone number is still incorrect on this slide?
Sarah changed it.
Okay.
Yeah,
So-
sorry.
That's all right.
I know they
Well,
changed it in
Look
our.
at you.
I know. I want to make sure my
I'll check on that,
constituents
Sarah.
can reach
So
me. if they-
based on the budget you posted,
We changed it, but he didn't change his slide.
yeah, based on the budget you posted, I already see one number that's wrong, and Maureen and I went over this today. But that general fund number will be something. I have that. That is the motion that I would be presenting to you as of the budget you posted. So what I'm taking from you tonight is the math coaches, which is still a possibility because you've tabled that. If you're considering funding that, that is all that will change on this motion, unless there's other stuff that I need to be thinking about.
I believe that, you know, Mr. Weinberg asked, and I just want to make sure that the potential for withdrawing from.
Be right there. This
There.
fund, fourth
So that
21
may
would probably
change.
go up to over 600.
And how much is currently in that?
I think there's over $1 million right now.
There is over another.
Okay.
And remember that extraordinary needs grant, I think was either 505 or 539, something like that, of one, that was, of that money for this year that we got late. And you're fortunate enough because of your structure to be able to put that away. And now next year, under current law, it's 404,000. But they are all in the general fund. We're just using those funds to prop it up. And they are unrestricted state funds, so you can do this. And we've already filed our report on it, of which there's legislation to stop the reporting on that too. So,
Thank you, Mr. Dunn.
Just
Go ahead, Ms. Hastings.
I just want to be sure that if we do add 2 more math coaches, and we pay for that with money from the instructional fund,
Mhm.
does that do anything to the Title II positions that we were funding 3 of the positions with? Can we still use the Title II and general fund money? Okay, because I know
Title-
some of them are tied where you,
The Title II people will be required to fill out a time and effort report. The ones in, the other 2, if you fund them, will not, because they're technically general funded.
okay. Okay, interesting.
Although,
We could ask them.
We're walking a fine line.
Yeah,
you might, I know it's a pain in the butt, but you might want to do mixed funds because
you may have to do.
they do intervention, and it's important, I think.
Different discussion.
Yes.
The question I would ask would be
I-
then, are they the appropriate interventionist people, or could we
Right.
have more efficient interventionist people?
I
But that's a
would-
different question.
We would manage that.
Yeah.
Go
We
ahead, Mr.
have
Cobb.
to.
One last question, Jack. I mean, if the suggestion is we would make 421, 600 or thereabouts, I assume my assumption is that doesn't affect the tax rate then.
No, because it'll offset, a lot of what you're doing now is not,
The
because,
alternative would be to increase the tax, as we discussed earlier, and leave the 421 where it is.
correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I would be more amenable to leaving the tax rate where it is. So altering another friendly amendment to that initial motion, because realistically, we are looking at an increase next year because there are positions we're gonna need to add to our general fund for longevity. Specifically, the OT, the preschool teacher, and I would argue the DEIJ as well, in order for our district to continue to function the way that it should. I mean, we're all gonna have to deal with that next year.
Perhaps more from that original list.
Yeah,
So,
And I believe my original motion didn't include where the funds would come from, so that
Okay.
would just be up for discussion on Wednesday.
so there'll be,
Okay.
when we take that off the table on Wednesday, there'll be.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
on the table, you guys.
Stop talking about it.
Doesn't have to. I got a funny feeling that someone will bring it off the table on Wednesday. But I don't want to prejudge.
Well,
So-
and the final thing I'll mention, which
Yes.
you don't have to make for determination of this budget, but you can, remember, when you were presented in the finance committee about the 500,000 that's left in ESSER that is not encumbered yet, the suggestion was to try to put it towards Beaver Meadow. I'm not looking for that in this budget to do it, but I'm just letting you know that was what we were gonna recommend. But that's your choice if you decide not to do it.
When do we need to make that decision?
We figure we'll have a joint facilities finance meeting and then come up with bond plans, because it's not gonna be enough to finance, say $3 million project. But I think I'm gonna probably have $1 million or maybe a little bit more towards it. We would bond the rest, but we may look at other things and try to put it into one bond, and we'll show you how we would get through the next budget year, but finance some long-term capital projects.
That's a post-budget finance discussion.
Yes.
For this spring.
We are not gonna do that Wednesday. I will promise you that.
Plus a board
Math
member
coaches and
brings it up.
HVAC. No, not a good combination. Sorry.
Is there
But-
not public?
That's it.
Mr. Cotton, do you have any?
No.
All right, anyone else have any other questions or comments with regards to tonight's meeting? Good hard work, everyone. Do we have any further business, Superintendent? In which case, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
No input?
Oh, you want to have public, we didn't necessarily have public comment, but I have no problem with adding some public comment on this evening. It was on there?
I'll make a motion to
Let's-
allow.
I
public
would
comment.
second, yeah.
All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, we have public comment. Go ahead, Ms. Dudley, you may have input.
I just told my babysitter.
I don't know if it was up.
Public information.
My name is Betty Hoadley. I've been a taxpayer for 62 years. 62. That's a long time. I can see that you have had this in your minds, and everybody has the same devil and angel on each shoulder. I could see it in your discussion tonight. I really loved what I saw, except, I spent 2 hours in the dentist chair this morning, and I've spent almost 2 hours here. And quite frankly, tomorrow, I think I'd rather go back to the dentist than come here again. The thing that I would recommend, please, is if you want to have people show up on Wednesday, you've got to have it in tomorrow's Eileen O'Grady in order to get it printed for people to show up Wednesday. If you think people are home watching this on TV, it's not happening. They're putting their kids to bed, they're doing the dishes, they're doing the laundry, they're doing all kinds of things. So if you really, really want people, you need to get it out, get the word out in a hurry. I was disappointed to hear that the math group did not get back to you by the end of the month of March. I thought to myself, what I see happening is two things. First of all, you're going to continue to have this business. Grants are double-edged swords. They give you an opportunity to do something, but then guess what? Then you have to decide whether you want to keep doing it and keep paying for it. So, it's not going to get any less. You're going to have these same kinds of problems again and again and again. And the second and last observation is this, that people are going to finally figure out that they need to be cheerleaders. And I'm going to scold two groups right now. I'm going to scold every taxpayer out there who wants to crab the first day they hear something about you. Because if they didn't show up, and they didn't show up early, then it's your fault. You can find out what's going to be on the boards, on the desk, and you better get there. And the other night, I was disappointed when the young lady was in here. She and I were the only ones. And it was a Johnny-come-lately, a squeaky wheel. They wanted you to go back and make the same arguments all over again in view of what she wanted to tell you. Well, honey, she should have been there sooner. And so should the Mr. Taxpayer and Mrs. Taxpayer. So the whole tone has changed. All of the grants, they're a double-edged sword. They give you a chance to do something, but then they require that you make hard, long decisions, more of them than you ever had to make before. And then the second thing is there has to be an idea of a cheerleader for your interests. And people better start practicing it. And I'll say to you, if you entertain it early, that's fair. But if you take it on the very last night, I'm saying, oh, come on. They've already done this 3 times. Why are you asking them to do it again? So we see the whole budgeting schema, strategy changing. And so you've already flagged it tonight. You know that it's going to be harder next year because you borrowed from here, put it over there. And I can see well, wait a minute, we took it from here and there. It's just going to get even more complicated. So all I can say is lots of luck.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Betty.
Thank you, Ms. Hoadley. Is there any other public comment? Not seeing any. I will close the public comment period and we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Robinson. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Higgins. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.